Facebook. And our conversation for today is around the affirmation that I learned literally almost 30 years ago. I am complete and whole just as I am right now today. So I want to talk about that, and we'll develop a conversation around that. First of all, thank you for being here. We've got people all over the place. Valerie and Greg are up at Georgetown. Okay, and I know Tommy's on the coast, and RJ's out with the kids, and Doug and Sharon
They're doing good,
but didn't sleep well last night. So and we've got people everywhere, and I want to welcome. And I had a chance to interact with Cecil this week. Cecil, Madeline, and I spent about an hour and a half together with a cup of coffee. Thank you for that cup of coffee. Sue is back from Arkansas, I believe. So we are rejoining, getting ready for next week when we get back together again. And I'm going back to my conversation that we started. I need to give you a little bit of background. Madeline and I got involved in the, let's call it the Unity New Thought movement back in 1978. I had somebody play a tape in the car on a trip from Montgomery, Alabama to Mobile, Alabama. And it was a tape of Catherine Ponder and her ideas. And it was like, wow, that's what I've been looking for. That's the conversation. Because as a lot of you know that I grew up in a very fundamentalist household and always had a hard time accepting it. And it was the first spark of somebody giving me an idea of what is possible. And we went through many iterations. We had the opportunity to be we subsequently moved to Mobile, Alabama, spent a few years there. Then we went on to Atlanta, Georgia, and then from Atlanta we went on to Richardson, Texas, right? Anyway, and when we wound up in Richardson, Texas, in the Dallas area, we studied with a very interesting man called John Paul Collard. John Paul Collard was a spiritual teacher. He was an interesting guy that had traveled behind the Iron Curtain when it was the Iron Curtain, and spent time with the spiritual teachers that were in those areas at the time. And I didn't know it at the time, and a lot of people don't know it, but a lot of the hospitals behind the Iron Curtain, especially in Poland and Hungary and some of those areas, they had on their staff a spiritual healer. So there's a lot of spiritual work going on in the healing institutions behind the Iron Curtain at that time. And John Paul had studied with a lot of people, and had a real basic knowledge in the spiritual principles. And he is the first one to start me on the affirmation process really heavily. And I can remember one of my duties was to write down every day for at least a half an hour, I am complete and whole just as I am right now today. And if you break that down, that came back to me this past week because I've been looking for how do we describe the process of awakening? How do we describe the process of reaching the understanding of who I really am? We talk about it and we, let's say, discuss it quite a bit and we're in dialogue, but how do I get that feeling? How do I get there? How do I have a life that works, that seems to be there, but I never have access to it? And I realized going back to it, that affirmation is kind of like the beginning of the conversation. So here's the idea. You, as an individual, are complete and whole, just as you are right now today. Now, that doesn't mean someday you're going to get into it. It doesn't mean you lost it in the past. It doesn't mean anything other than right now, today, you are complete and whole. And wholeness means, in its definition, complete. It means everything you need is already there. You are happy and harmonious. You are living well, you have good relationships, and life is enjoyable without struggle. And that's quite a definition, but that means you are there now. So, if that's true, then how come it ain't that way, if I can use the vernacular in this? Because that's our struggle. And we've been told over and over again that's what's possible, and we're over here. Now, subsequently, and a lot of you know that we spent time with the Joel Goldsmith conversations, and we're still there. We have gone on into using the Charles Fillmore, and I like Myrtle Fillmore's work. And then recently we've been doing a lot more work in A Course of Love after going through A Course in Miracles. And A Course in Love very clearly says the time for learning is completed. The time for direct knowing is here. So the knowing is that promise that you are complete and whole, just as you are right now today. And I've been thinking about how do we talk about that? How do we deal with that? And I watch myself. I shared the story last week of the snake that was in the backyard and my automatic reaction and my subsequent regret of how I acted, etc., etc. In conversations with my family. Anybody familiar with getting upset? Okay. So how do those things occur? Because if I'm complete and whole, just as I am, how do I get upset? Why do things upset me when they're not the way I think they should be? And what I was told this week is it's acceptance. So no one, if you're really looking at it, there's an acceptance of what is. One of the biggest issues is, here is who I am. Here is what I have created. Here is my foibles and everything with me. And it's an acceptance of that. I'm reminded of one of the first steps, or I don't know all 10 steps, but even in the AA program, we have to acknowledge where we are. And that acknowledgement is an acceptance of what is true. So if I'm upset, and let's just say, I don't want to pick on Madeline, but next door neighbor, I'll make that story up, okay? The truth is, I'm upset. And I can make myself guilty. I can make myself, well, that's not right. That's not being Christian, if I can use that terminology. But the truth is, there's something within me that's creating that. And until I accept it, it's going to be there buried. So, I asked, what can I work with? And I came up with Eric Butterworth's Practical Metaphysics. And he had some very interesting conversation. And I'm going to I don't like to do a lot of reading, but I want to read this because it has a real impact in what we're dealing with. Because he goes to say the point is, unfortunately, Christian tradition, and I'm going to say Christian tradition, Jewish tradition, all religious traditions, has supported the concept of the miserable sinner nature of human being and the divinity of Jesus, which totally loses the full thrust of that which Jesus had to give to everyone as of his teachings. So we have been programmed that we are miserable sinners. We live in guilt, and we have to be saved from all this guilt. Everybody see the setup? And once you believe something, then you spend all your life trying to prove that you're not that. And anytime I try to prove you're not that, I keep creating what? Law of attraction says I keep creating that which I don't want to be. So I'm in a constant turmoil of anxiety because I'm never the way I should be. I am that. So the next thing is, after I accept that is who I am, then it goes on and says, the heart of Jesus' teachings was not the depravity depravity of humankind, but the divinity of humankind. Now, can we say it any clearer? I'm going to say it again. The heart of Jesus' teachings was not the depravity of human beings, but the divinity of human beings. The heart of Jesus' teachings was the I amness of every individual. And the Bible backs that up. In the beginning, Genesis says we're created in the image and after the likeness of God, which means we inherit everything God is. And then 2,000 years later, or approximately, Jesus says, and he came to correct all the stuff that had occurred, you are the light of the world. It's the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom, and the kingdom is within you, so everything you need is already there. So if you take it logically, how can I be sinful? How can I be guilty if I am the presence and the Spirit of Holy Spirit within me expressing itself in this world? He goes on and says, Jesus discovered his own divine image, and he fulfilled the personal requirement of living it out into expression fully and completely. So Jesus demonstrated who he is. His ministry was devoted to, are you ready for this term? And I'd like you to think about this term. His ministry was devoted to the repeatability of the Christ. And I'm going to say that again, the repeatability of the Christ. And you see, that's the issue. The repeatability of the Christ is who you are. So the truth is completely logical that just as you are complete and whole, just as you are right now today. And that's the truth. Okay? That's a phrase that some don't like because of their traditional backgrounds. But it's a very important one. Nothing shall be impossible unto you. He said nothing. So we either believe what Jesus said or we don't. We either look at it logically or we don't. So we are told we are the expression of God. We are told we're created in the image and likeness of God. We are told that we are the light of the world. And we are also told that God is complete. God is omnipresent, which means everywhere present. God is omniscient, which means God is all-knowing. And God is omnipotent, which is all power. And we are created in the image and after the likeness of God. So if you take that and look at it logically, who are you? Okay? And if that's true, what has occurred that it's not that way? So looking at it, and he says, there's a little bit more he says further on in the book. And he says, there's no need to change people, not to set them right. So I don't have to change Madeline. I don't have to change my family. I don't have to convince you that you are anything other than the Christ. Okay? So there's no need to change people. There's no need to set them right or to straighten them out. Because when we look, if we look with the Christ eyes, we see the Christ and nothing else. And then it goes, but to see them rightly and straighten them out in our own projected consciousness is our job. I'm led to talk about Cecil right now. And Cecil, I want you to know that I love you. Okay? We spent an hour and a half with him. And I'm not going to get all involved in his background. I don't know all of his background. But I'm clear that Cecil has had a chance to look at himself completely and wholly. And Cecil has had a chance to accept who he is. And then he has figured out how to be who he is in spirit. Okay? Which is a beautiful model. And Cecil, thank you for allowing me to share that. And I want you to know that that's true. I see that in you. Now, the truth is, I see that in each one of you. And we're all just struggling. And it reminded me, I don't know whether you remember this or not, But Disney had a wonderful, wonderful animated movie called The Sorcerer's Apprentice. And The Sorcerer's Apprentice was a story about, and it was Mickey Mouse was the lead in this thing. And he was a sorcerer's apprentice. And the sorcerer knew how to stop the rains, knew how to create floods, knew how to stop floods. And Mickey was his assistant. He was his servant. He was the janitor. And one day, Mickey got a hold of the sorcerer's wand and the broom. And he said, oh, I know how to do this because I watched the sorcerer. And what happened was he used the wand and the broom, and all of a sudden it all got out of control. And he wound up in a huge flood with a big storm. Everything came apart. The world was crushing apart. And the sorcerer came in and cleaned everything up. And what I realized is we are like the sorcerer's apprentice. We have forgotten the powers that we have. We have forgotten that we create our own world. We have been dumbed down to the point where we're listening to everybody around us, and we have accepted all the programming of the world, and we're saying, well, we're still fighting that subconscious, I'm not good enough, he doesn't love me, this or whatever stories we make up, that we are the victim and we try so hard, right back into Bruce's salute, oh my God, I've tried so hard, and look what has happened. And it's just like the Sorcerer's Apprentice that's created all this mess because he didn't know how to handle the powers that came with the wand. So the truth is, you are the Christ. You are the control of your life. You are the creator of all that is in your life. And whether I like it or not, I have to accept that and then look around, and when I don't like something, realize Madeline didn't do it to me. The next door neighbor didn't do it to me. As a matter of fact, I attracted them to me to do it. So it's crazy, and we blame everybody else. But here we are, understanding that we just lost control because we didn't know better. So the irony of it, it's amazing to me. It really is. And I really wish I could. There are very few regrets I have in life. I've had a chance to give them up. But I do regret that I lost contact with John Paul Collard, because that information's coming back to me 30, 35 years later. And it finally makes sense of who I am and what I need to talk about in supporting you as the Christ that you are. Because you are complete and whole, just as you are right now today. And all of us have forgotten that. And we're using the world's beliefs to create the world we think we should have, because that's the way we believe things work. But they don't work that way. They work on a spiritual level. The kingdom of heaven is within. Love is the answer energy for everything. So Jesus very clearly said, love thy enemy as thyself, and thy neighbor as thyself. Love the Lord thy God. And everything else straightens out. Now, I've got to go to the basics of unity, which is the lessons in truth. Anybody familiar with that? We're right back to basics. Emily Cady, again, and this was published in the beginning times of unity back in 1890s, early 1900s. And she says, when you have learned how to abandon yourself to infinite spirit and have seasons of doing this daily. So it's a daily process of reconditioning. You will be surprised at the marvelous change that will be wrought in you without any conscious effort on your own. That last phrase is the thing that I keep looking at, because we're right back to being a human doing or a human being. Okay? We have been trained that we are sinful. And I'm going back Madeline was looking for a picture to put with the article that we sent out on Saturday morning. And that's this picture, okay? So that's a archer's target, and there's arrows in the bullseye. And that's a bullseye of life. And that bullseye signifies that's where we want to be. That's the heart. That's the Garden of Eden. And we keep thinking we can shoot arrows all over the place, especially at somebody that annoys us, and it's hitting the target. It's not. So we're going right back to the misinterpretation of what sin means. All it means is we've learned the wrong system, we've learned the wrong way, we've learned the wrong strategies to reach the Garden of Eden, Nirvana, whatever you choose to do it. And that's simple teachings of Jesus. Was the kingdom of heaven is within. It's the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. And I'm going back to what, you ready? This is what Emily Katie said. You will be surprised at the marvelous change that will be brought in you without any conscious effort on your own. Which means it's not my job, it's not our job, it's not your job. It's our job to let go and Spirit do it for us. And we have been trained over and over and over again that if it is to be, it's up to me. Anybody familiar with that? So the truth is that you are already complete and whole, just as you are right now today. And the word, in the course of love over the last few weeks, the word acceptance keeps coming up. We have to accept things. And the first thing to accept is we're using a system that doesn't work. Now, are you ready? If we were listening to the world and the world had an answer and had the correct answers to how to live life effectively with harmony, joy, and peace, we would be there. Because that word would spread like wildfire because everybody's looking. And it's not there. Because human beings have been trying for centuries. And here we are. We're the most enlightened group in the world, history of the world. We have more things than we're aware of. And the more things we accumulate, the more issues we have. Because the more things we accumulate, the more things we have to fix. And the more things we have to deal with, and the more issues that we have to deal with. Matt was laughing. We bought, 2 coffee makers in the last couple of months. Okay? So there's more issues to deal with, the more stuff we have. So we keep thinking that, well, if I add this, it'll be wonderful. Or if I add another relationship, or someday I'm going to find the one I really love. And it's always out there. So that's the first acceptance that it ain't out there. Everybody there? And I've been using and following a flawed system that didn't get me where I want to go. So first acceptance. The next thing is, I admit I don't know how to get to the bullseye because I haven't been trained in how to do it. If I've been struggling all life, and everybody's been struggling all life, and we're still having diseases, etc., etc. So, the next thing is accepting that the kingdom is within. Do you see all these, we use these words to make us feel good. I want to feel good. Oh God, yes, that's true. And I'm gonna rely on you to make me feel good, appreciate me. And it's Madeline's job to love me, to take care of me. And you see, that's all false. And those are all the things we accumulate. And the truth is, it's over and over again. It's the kingdom of heaven within. And Course of Love says that. Myrtle, Charles Fillmore say that. Everywhere I go in spiritual writings, it says that's what's true. So I can stop searching outside and start searching inside. That's the next step is. Okay? So, and then once I do that step, acceptance, follow the guidance from within with love. And see, the only way I can do that is go on the spiritual path. And the spiritual path is a certain amount of prayer and meditation every day, silence. It's reading a certain amount of spiritual literature, pull out your book, whatever it is, read something. It's also hanging around and being part of the energy. Remember, you and I are radiant beings. We radiate love or we radiate other things. And if we can be around folks that radiate love, we take that in and we begin to synchronize the love. So it's important that we hang out together. That's why I'm looking forward to next week. Now, I believe that we are still hanging out together in the ethers right now, but I'd much rather be with you physically. So I'm looking forward to that. But that's accept and follow the inner guidance, because you see, we're still following the issues of the world. We're still reacting to whether people like me or dislike me. We're still reacting to whether it's good or bad. We're still reacting to if this, then that. We're still making every decision on the outside instead of going inside. And I admit that's the big struggle we're dealing with. Okay? So, that last step, accept and follow the inner guidance and love. And it's difficult to accept the inner guidance. Because the question is that really true? Is that little voice really telling me what to do? Have I made all these mistakes, or was I guided to do something? Whatever it is. But it's acceptance of that inner guide and having faith and trust that it's guiding us. Okay? I am looking forward to next week. In my opinion, this is it. We are now back together again. I'm looking forward to our membership meeting afterwards, because we have some exciting things to share with you. We are moving forward. We are creating a new space to be in, and we're looking forward to be one with you again. I love you dearly, and I know that you love each other and see only the Christ, and I hold that for you, knowing that I and the Father are one, you and the Father are one, we and the Father are one, they and the Father are one, and everything I see is of divinity. And so it is. Amen.